Hi everyone, I'm with Sara Heilman, who is the Energy Policy Coordinator with NC Warren. And just getting started, could you talk about NC Warren and what your all's mission is and what you do?
Definitely. So, NC Warren is a 37-year-old nonprofit. We're a statewide organization in North Carolina, but the majority of our staff is based around Central or Durham, North Carolina. So that's where we do a lot of our work. Um, being a 37-year-old org, we've been around for a long time. Our director has been with us for over 30 of those years. So lots of good history. We're also member-based, which means that over 90% of our funding comes from individuals. So lots of individuals across the state and across the country help contribute to our work. And mainly we operate as a watchdog of Duke Energy's practices. So being in North Carolina, we're in one of the states where Duke Energy has a monopoly. They're a regulated utility. Um, and Duke Energy as a corporation is the third largest corporate polluter in the United States. And so we really believe that a shift in Duke Energy's behavior could have a real tangible impact on the state of the climate crisis since they're so big. Um, so our main mission is to stop Duke Energy from expanding frack gas and suppressing renewables. We do that in a variety of ways with a lot of different strategies, and in collaboration with a lot of different types of partners. Our team itself is pretty small, but we're a part of a bigger movement and network of allies that are working on similar stuff.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I was going to ask what kind of strategies you all do for this work.
Yeah, definitely. So it sort of depends on, what feels the most pertinent in any given moment, depending on who's in leadership positions, what's at play. Um, there are a few main categories that we tend to operate in. The first one would be legal action. So sometimes that looks like intervening in hearings at the North Carolina Utilities Commission. Um, like every 2 years, there's a process where Duke Energy has to file what they call a carbon plan, which lays out how they're planning to meet emissions reduction goals in the coming years. And we tend to be one of the groups that intervenes in that process, provides input, and attempts to, influence the commission to mandate that Duke generate more clean energy than they currently are. Sometimes legal stuff also looks like lawsuits themselves. So right now, the town of Carrboro has a lawsuit filed against Duke Energy Corporation. We're not a formal party in the lawsuit, but we are assisting and we're also covering the legal fees. So that has been a big project as well. And then other strategies for us, we tend to do a good amount of public education and awareness work. So, as a watchdog organization, we really want to bring to light Duke Energy's behavior as a bad corporate actor, um, and bring forward some transparency because a lot of the time Duke Energy sort of operates in the shadows. They hide behind like really complicated dockets and jargon and everyday people don't really have access to understand what exactly is going on with Duke Energy. So we do a lot of like presentations, engaging with students, sometimes running paid ads. We have an ad campaign that's running right now. And then beyond that, we do some advocacy work, mobilizing our members to take action. So that'll be like letter writing campaigns, sometimes rallies, sign on letters, stuff like that. So it really depends on the moment what feels like the best strategy. And oftentimes, multiple strategies are working in tandem as well.
Yeah, definitely. And could you talk about what you're currently working on and what Duke Energy is currently doing in North Carolina?
Yeah, definitely. Um, there's a lot going on. I would say there are two main projects that I would really love to highlight that we're working on right now. So the first of those I just mentioned, which is the town of Carrboro's lawsuit versus Duke Energy Corporation. Um, in December of 2024, the town of Carrboro filed a lawsuit against Duke Energy Corporation for climate deception. Um, basically what the lawsuit says is that Duke Energy leadership, and so this goes back decades, so even before Duke Energy was Duke Energy. So, there were previous electric companies that ultimately merged to create what we know as Duke Energy today. What the lawsuit says is that leadership of these companies have known since the 1960s that burning fossil fuels could irreparably harm our planet and our communities. And then moving through the decades, the lawsuit shows evidence of some of these leaders basically being among the ringleaders of a national deception scheme to tell the public the exact opposite, that actually fossil fuels won't harm the community, we should invest in clean coal. So basically, the lawsuit is saying that because Duke Energy leaders knew and then were deceptive in order to maintain their business model of relying on coal and gas, it's worsened the climate crisis. Um, and in turn, it has damaged the town of Carrboro. So right now, Carrboro is paying more for things like stormwater management or repairing roads due to heat and rain, heating and cooling buildings, stuff like that. They're currently paying more than they would have if the climate crisis wasn't so bad at this point, essentially. And so the lawsuit is saying that Duke Energy owes the town of Carrboro damages for its contributions to the climate crisis through its deception.
Mm.
So, this is the first lawsuit of its kind against an electric utility. There have been similar suits against what we might think of as more traditional fossil fuel companies like Exxon, stuff like that. But this is the first of its kind against an electric power provider. So, it's somewhat historic in that sense. Um, and I think it really highlights what has been going on with Duke and with a lot of utilities for decades and what continues today in many ways. Still, if you go look at Duke Energy's website, there's a lot of language and imagery of clean energy. Like, you can see wind turbines, you can see solar panels. But in reality, clean energy makes up a minimal portion of the power that Duke Energy is generating. Um, I was just looking at Duke Energy's, and I think this was corporation wide, so beyond just the Carolinas, they operate in more states. Um, but their energy generation mix from 2023 was like 2% for solar and hydroelectric.
Mm.
So it really is a very small portion of the energy that they're generating that's clean. Um, so there's definitely a discrepancy between how I think Duke Energy presents itself as, a clean energy leader and making a lot of progress in the transition off of fossil fuels, uh, when in reality it's a sort of deceptive tactic. Um, and so this has been a really exciting project to be a part of. I actually live in Carrboro, so it's been really cool and wonderful to see the Carrboro Town Council members exhibit the bravery it takes to stand up to Duke Energy. Um, and my impression is that the people of Carrboro have been really supportive as well. So that I think is the first major project. And then sort of in tandem with that, NC Warren has been working on a campaign that we're calling Stop Climate Deception. So, highlighting the lawsuit, trying to bring attention to the issues and the history that it's revealed, but including in that some strategies to try to influence Duke Energy to change on a broader level. And our main strategy right now is putting positive pressure on Governor Josh Stein. So Stein is our new governor. He has a good track record when it comes to environmental issues. Um, as our attorney general, which he was prior to being governor, he was involved in some lawsuits to hold polluters accountable. So we are pretty optimistic that he would be sympathetic to arguments about how we need to get serious about changing North Carolina's path and getting off of fossil fuels. And so we have been really trying to get the attention of his office get as many of our members and our allies and others to join in, basically to tell Stein that we've seen the good work that he's done so far, and we really would love for him to step up and be a bold climate leader in the state, to stand up to Duke Energy and do what he can to change their course as well.
Yeah, that's great. And that's like super inspiring to hear because I've never heard a lawsuit like this because I'm from
Mhm.
Tennessee and it's kind of similar with TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, and their monopoly on energy. So, yeah, that's really cool to hear. And are you all also doing anything with the natural gas build out that Duke Energy is doing over there? Because I've heard a lot about that.
Um, Yeah, yeah, definitely some. So I do feel like all of these, there's like a lot of different environmental issues that are ultimately enmeshed and influence each other. Um, there's a lot of organizations doing really great, more targeted work related to the gas build out. And so definitely don't want us to take any credit on doing that, more gas specific work. Our team and capacity has been relatively small, so we haven't been as involved in a lot of the pushback that's been going on around like the Person County gas plants. There's a lot of groups doing really great organizing there. Our focus more so has been to advocate for what we see as an alternative and as a solution to gas plants, which would be local solar and batteries.
Mm,
We really think that local solar, and so when I say local, I mean solar that is located where the power is needed and used. So it could be something small scale, like solar panels on a residential roof, or it could be something larger, like panels across a bunch of warehouses, or um, like in brownfields or vacant lands near a town or city. Basically, we think that this type of solar is the fastest, cheapest, and most equitable way to phase out fossil fuels because it can be built really quickly, expanded quickly. And you also, when you locate solar close to population centers and places that need a lot of electricity, you don't have to build out as many high voltage power lines or transmission lines as you would if you built a solar farm somewhere rural and then needed to build a lot of power lines to move that electricity to a population center that needs the majority of it. Um, and so we have been trying to, sort of find all angles of how we could possibly start getting this solar built. Unfortunately, customer-owned solar threatens Duke Energy's business model, and so Duke has been pretty resistant to it and even taking measures to sort of squash it over the years. Right now, the way that Duke Energy makes a profit is generally that it has a guaranteed rate of return when it builds new capital resources. So whenever Duke constructs like a new gas plant or new power lines, they recoup the cost of building it from customers plus a guaranteed 10% rate of return. Um, and so there's not that same incentive to try to get customers to build and own solar because Duke can't get that same rate of return that they do when they build a big project. And so it kind of creates this dynamic where Duke is really incentivized to always build the biggest project they possibly can. Even when it doesn't make the most sense, it's not the cheapest option, it's not the most environmentally friendly option. Um, so we've been really trying to find ways to advocate for as much local solar as we can. And currently, what that looks like is our great engineer, Rao Konadena, helped us file testimony at the Utilities Commission advocating for what we're calling sharing solar. Basically, we're proposing that local solar could be built and paid for the same way that other resources are currently built and paid for. So, like if Duke Energy can build a gas plant and charge us for it on our electric bills, why can't Duke Energy instead fund a bunch of local solar panels across multiple neighborhoods or multiple cities and towns and put that cost into the rate system instead of a new gas plant? So basically, challenging Duke to confront this idea that they could even maintain their business model, they can maintain the way that they currently make a profit, but wouldn't we rather pay for solar on our electric bills instead of gas? So that's what we're advocating for right now. To be honest, the commission didn't really give it the time of day during the last carbon plan proceeding. And so that's sort of part of our strategy right now with outreach to Governor Stein is that there is an alternative way forward, that it requires some imagination and innovation, but we really think that there's a way to do it. And so yeah, that's sort of been dovetailing with here's what Duke Energy is currently up to, and here's a possibility for a different path forward for the state.
Yeah, that's great. And what are some past successes you've seen in your work?
Yeah, definitely. So there's definitely been some good past successes, and um, like I said, we've been around for 37 years, so I think there's been many highs and lows over those years. This is an area of work where sometimes there's a lot of incremental victories. I think the biggest, most recent victory that I can think of is the cancellation of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So that fight went on for 6 years. I think it was 2014 to 2020. Um, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline was in process, and I believe that Duke and Dominion spent like $8 billion on the construction before it was canceled. So it was a long and drawn out fight that a lot of different environmental and community groups were involved in. Um, NC Warren was part of some of the legal challenges to the pipeline. We also did a lot of press work and outreach to the governor at that time to urge him to take action. Um, and we also worked with a group of scientists who wrote a letter basically urging Duke to get off gas, expressing their opinion as scientists that um, it was really, really the most integral thing that we need to do to face the climate crisis is to get off gas. Um, and so, of course, those things were working in tandem with a lot of actions by other environmental groups and frontline groups. And then that project was announced as being canceled in um, 2020, which was really exciting. It was actually before my time at NC Warren, but definitely still is talked about as a major, major success. And then we've also seen some successes over the years in terms of putting pressure on governors, which is, part of why we are prioritizing putting positive pressure on Josh Stein now as one of our main strategies. Um, I think it was the early 2000s, we were able to influence a governor to basically, have sort of private conversations with Duke Energy or I guess it was Progress Energy at that point, to stop nuclear fuel rods from being shipped to North Carolina. Um, and so that was another success. In the early 2000s, we were doing a lot more nuclear focused work. We were also there for the cleanup of the Warren County PCB landfill in the early 2000s. So there's been success over the years, definitely. But in a lot of ways too, it's sort of an uphill battle. And we face a lot of opposition from a lot of really powerful entities. And so I do think it, requires some grit and some resilience to keep pushing forward sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And is there anything that we missed that you think is important to talk about or touch on?
Um, I think I would just touch on, I guess I could plug a little bit if anybody wants to learn more about the work that we're doing. Um, We are working with the Center for Biological Diversity to assist in the Carrboro lawsuit. They're a really great national organization, and we've put together a website called suedukeenergy.org. Um, there's a lot of really great information there on the lawsuit, but also how people can take action to help, join in the call to Governor Stein. And there's like a form there where you could send a personalized email to his team. There's also a sign-on letter for groups and businesses. And then just a lot of really great, interesting information about the suit itself. I very rarely encourage anyone to read a long legal document. I personally don't want to read long legal documents, but the actual legal complaint from the town of Carrboro is linked on that website. And I genuinely think it's extremely enlightening and very, very interesting. It goes through all of that history of Duke and its subsidiaries, um, and just the deception over the years, what they knew, the meetings that they were present at. And so I think for anybody wanting to learn more about Duke Energy and why NC Warren really believes that, changing Duke's behavior could have an impact, should take a look at that website and see what you find. And finally, if anyone wants to reach out to me, if anyone has more questions, my email is Sara, SARA, @ncwarren.org, and I am happy to chat more.
Awesome. Great.